For the next presentation, I'd like to introduce another CED trustee who has been integral to the development of our policy recommendations and the success of many of our programs. Beth Brooke is Global Vice Chair of Public Policy at Ernst & Young and has brought her expertise and background, knowledge, and expertise to directly impact CED's policy programs. Beth chaired our Women's Economic Empowerment Subcommittee, whose work culminated in an exceptionally well-received policy statement fulfilling the promise how more women on corporate boards would make America and American companies more competitive. Beth and Ernst & Young are perfect examples of business leaders that want to make a difference in society, and CED was proud to present the Corporate Citizenship Award to them both last year. If you were here at last year's dinner, you'll remember Beth's eloquent words in accepting the award. She is terrific. Beth, thanks for being here, and thanks for all you do for CED. Please come to the stage.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here with all of you and with the CED tonight to introduce someone who is truly incredible. He is not only a success in business, but he's a creative leader and a compassionate human being. And I actually did some due diligence by talking to some of his old friends. Danger. And what I heard was just some incredible things, that he's just the most unpretentious guy in the world. Has a great heart, and he's totally authentic. I love those words, that's the first words used to describe someone. I'm not even sure if Richard Edelman needs an introduction. He's led a distinguished career as president of his family's company since 1985 and CEO since 1996. And let's not forget that Edelman is the largest PR firm in the world, and Richard has taken it from a great company to a greater company, and that's hard to do in a family business. And there probably isn't one of us in the room who hasn't had Richard by our side through a challenge. I know I have, and you wouldn't want to be in the bunker with anyone else. Richard's actively involved in many associations and causes. For those of you who don't follow him, he's an active blogger. It's called 6 a.m. For those of you who don't follow him yet. I frequently, run into him at Davos, and the firm was recently named the PR agency of the decade. But I'm most proud, as Mike alluded to introduce Richard because of all that he has done to advocate women's issues. And it's why we're here to recognize him with the Leadership in Diversity Award. I recently had the honor, as Mike mentioned, of leading a subcommittee at CED that addressed the issues of advancing women on corporate boards. And frankly, it's one of the reasons I'm just so proud of CED. The CED takes on issues that matter, not in a self-interested way, but in a very publicly interested way. What the CED trustees saw was the lack of women on our corporate boards in the U.S. is a growing issue of American competitiveness. Many of our senior executive women in the United States are actually being actively recruited to be board members of boards in other countries, because the U.S. is lagging behind in its appetite for bringing on women onto corporate boards. And CED weighed in, and the reason was there was no more credible organization than the CED to bring a call to action around this issue. The group of trustees that it has was so appropriate to try to bring this issue to the forefront. And so the CED made diversity and gender issues a priority, because it realized that these issues were important not only for our businesses, but for our society and for our country. And for that, I'm very proud to be a trustee at the CED. Now, our paper actually received a terrific response from many CEOs, and most all of them were men. And wouldn't you know it, though? Richard was the first one to endorse the paper. That was no surprise to any of us. It's always been at the forefront of Richard's mind. And it shouldn't be hard to get women ahead in the business world. That's what he's all about. In view of this challenge, though, at Edelman, Richard sponsored the creation of what's called the Global Women's Executive Network, GWEN. I don't know about the acronym, Richard. I don't know. It's an internal task force at Edelman, and through that network, women in the firm are encouraged to excel and to reach the senior-most levels of the firm. They're given unique opportunities really through a 4-point plan: mentorship, education, sponsorship, and career paths. And we know how fundamental those things are to advancing women in business. And Richard's not alone in those programs. He has a team that is committed to the cause, including Gail Becker. She's the vice chair of Canada, Latin America, and the U.S. Western region. I had the great pleasure of serving on a panel as we launched the CED paper with Gail, and she was a terrific addition to the panel and a great representative of Edelman. Matt Harrington, also, Edelman's global COO, is also leading these efforts with Richard. But let's be clear. I think everybody in the room, from our years of experience, knows that progress on this issue of advancing women into senior leadership roles and onto corporate boards only comes when two things happen. First, you have to have tone at the top. It has to be clearly visible, and it has to be demonstrable. Richard epitomizes that. Second, you have to have metrics with clear accountability and incentives aligned to those metrics. Well, that is Richard Edelman. Tone from the top, it's clear, and a clear milestone to shoot for. Here's what Richard instructed his troops to work toward by 2016. This was the goal. 50% of Edelman's leadership, their strategy, operations, and other practice groups, 50% of Edelman's leadership will be women by the year 2016. 50, not 15, 50%. Richard, we salute you for your clarity and your leadership and for being the first to endorse the CED report. That was real leadership. So it is a pleasure to honor you. What a wonderful way to acknowledge the importance of women and, frankly, the importance of difference. Richard, please join us and accept this well-deserved award.
Alan, how'd you do that? Sort of like my workout. So I'm not quite gifted enough to just do this extemporaneously, so I'll do my best with my script. So 60 years ago, last month, my dad, Dan Edelman, started a little PR business in the Merchandise Mart in Chicago. And his first client was a company called Tony, T-O-N-I. Now, just a show of hands, does anybody remember Tony Home Permanents? Anybody? Okay. Well, either you had good grandmothers or something. Anyway, so his first client was the Tony Home Permanent Company, and my dad's big idea was to send 6 sets of identical twins out on media tour across the United States to show the quality of home permanence. Now, actually, on the second stop of the media tour, 3 sets of the twins were arrested for practicing cosmetology without a license in Oklahoma. And so my dad, tender age 28, was in his office in Chicago, and the president of the Tony Company comes storming in and he says, "Dan, your twins were arrested. What the hell are you going to do about it?" And so he said, "I'm going to call the Associated Press." And the Associated Press went dutifully to the jail, shot a picture of the twins behind bars. He flew them from New York to New York to be on the Today Show, and that's the illicit beginnings of Edelman. So, in any case, it's all true. I can swear to it. At least he swears to it. I wasn't around yet. But in the 6 decades since my dad started our company, the influence of pioneering women has been very important. And the most influential of all those is my mom, actually, because long before there was such a thing as networking, she was networking. She introduced my dad to CEOs all over Chicago who eventually became our clients, partly because she was a pretty aggressive gal. And she'd also bring, I can tell you this is true, she one time brought 300 journalists to our house for a rather liquor-soaked evening. But in any case, aside from my mother, many of my dad's top lieutenants have been women, because the marketing and PR industry has always been heavily represented by women. But my dad always has believed that women worked harder, were more creative, and were more team-oriented. And for 60 years, this has been so at our company. That hasn't changed. But what I will say tonight is it's not enough. It's no longer enough. Because it's not enough to understand that women are vital to the business's success. We're at a point where we have to act on that belief. And so 2 years ago, we started looking around the table at Edelman. And we had a lot of very successful, strong, creative, hardworking women running big accounts, doing great work. But these women somehow were not in leadership positions. It became increasingly apparent that for every one woman in leadership, there were 3 or 4 others who could have been, but weren't. In fact, my wife is one of the people who is one of them, because after 17 years in investment banking, a field not exactly known for workplace flexibility, she quit after the 3rd kid. And the reason is not because of her kids or her clients, because they wanted her to stay, but her boss could not provide her a solution that would have allowed her to raise 3 kids without being on the road for 4 days a week. And she said, no mas, I'm out of here, that's it. And by the way, her boss never even had a discussion with her. And she was too embarrassed to go to him and say, I got to have a change here. So that's a problem. So look, there are a lot of reasons women aren't at the leadership table. Structural, societal, we got all that. But a lot of men, with the best of intentions, don't even ask moms to consider assignments that involve travel, even if they're close colleagues, because they think they're doing the right thing. Women also lack the networks necessary for advancement. I don't know why that is. Maybe networking comes more clearly to men. I doubt it, given my mother. But in PR, here's something that's statistical. 2/3 of the people in public relations are women. But at firms all over, including ours, where the top leadership is only 22% women. It's not good, and it's not good enough. Achieving gender equality in leadership is not a radical transformation. By the way, it's not even particularly innovative, and it's also actually not too hard to imagine. But what is clear is that it's not something we're going to achieve without making a conscious decision to do it, because the status quo is not going to change on its own. And it's only going to get worse. I'm going to argue it's going to get worse. Why? Because we're increasingly expected to operate across geographies, time zones, always beyond technology. You got to balance dual working folks or single-headed households, aging parents, lots of kids. The deficit is in danger of growing, in short. So I believe that the solution is gender equality in the workplace, but it's not to be grouped under a moral obligation, something to be put under CSR or nice to do to make society better. Ensuring gender balance in leadership is a business imperative, in my business and all yours. And how are you going to do it? How are we going to get women to that point? To move the needle, I believe that there has to be a formal effort with goals and metrics to measure progress. It's one thing for a few isolated people to take leadership action. It's not enough. We have to have the full force of organization behind measurable goals. And that's why we started this thing called Gwen. I'm sorry you don't like the name, Beth. We'll think about changing it. Clearly, you are a branding expert. We're doing our best. Wherever you are, darling. There you are. I thought it was cute. Okay, whatever. It was catchy. It was good at the time. Anyway, look, it started with a little idea and a few committed individuals. But I want you to know, out of 4,500 people, we have 735 members across our global network who have joined Gwen. 2% are men. But they're the best and the brightest our firm has. And the most important point is that our program takes a so-called principled approach, the same principles recognized by McKinsey last week as essential for business leaders who want this program to succeed. 1, treat gender diversity like any other strategic business imperative. 2nd, ask for and demand to have data and talk about it. Be transparent about it. Where are we? It's 22% today. It's going to be better next year. 3rd, and this is really important, establish a culture of sponsorship. Sponsorship is a further evolved step beyond mentorship. Mentorship happens when 2 people are in a room. I'm mentoring Pat. But sponsorship happens when you're not in the room. It's when you're going out and talking about promising young women executives who deserve a chance, deserve to be pushed ahead. Not the one-on-one, but broader. Advocate on behalf of a woman professional. And then 4th, raise awareness of what a diverse work environment could look like. So our aim is quite simple, to have 50% of our leadership in Edelman by 2016 be women. It's a ways to go before we get there. And at the end of year 1, though, I want you to know we've had a 25% increase in promotions of women at the senior-most levels of our firm. I'm very proud of that. So we're crawling forward. Thank you. And we've started to see the kernels of this culture of sponsorship. And that means men and women alike becoming advocates for other women and helping them pursue and get growth opportunities. That's what Sam Palmisano did at IBM to make Ginny Rometty the CEO. That's what it takes. Sponsorship, not mentorship. We have to be more assertive about helping women identify new roles and work harder to encourage them to take the roles when they question their own qualifications. Beth kindly mentioned Gail. I want you to know that she turned down the opportunity to be manager of our LA office 7 times before I finally persuaded her to do it. Beyond that, I actually offered her the job to run Latin America and Canada, and again, she had self-doubts, and she said, I can't do this. I've got kids. I said, Gail, do it on your own terms, but you can do this. And she's doing a great job and turned the business around. So there we are. We also have instituted a thing called the Global Fellows Program for our promising young women who are in their late 20s and early 30s, and we're sending them around the world. We have them in Shanghai and Jakarta. We have them in Moscow. It hasn't always been pretty. I got to tell you the truth. In Jakarta, it was a disaster. We sent someone who was very aggressive, and the culture was bad. But okay, 6 out of 8 was good. And so there we are. We're going to have 6 or 8 new women who are going to be leaders in the future of our firm. It's a big deal. And we've also changed our policies, leave of absence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to bore you. But look, the most important thing is that we've created a culture in our firm where people, our own people, and particularly the women, are telling us they've never been more proud or loyal or committed to helping this firm get to success. And that's a big deal. So in closing, it's a business imperative to achieve gender parity in leadership, but I also, just so you know, have a real selfish reason here. I'm a dad with 3 daughters. It's a family business. And so, you know, I'm inspired every day by these characters. In fact, I'm hoarse today because I was up watching one of them play in an NCAA tournament yesterday in volleyball, and I have no voice left. But you know, they're creative, strong-willed, independent-minded characters. And not so secretly, I hope that one or all of them will choose to work and lead at Edelman. But whether they come to Edelman or choose to contribute somewhere else, I hope that the workplace that's working for them, that's waiting for them, is one that will be changed for the better. We're on our way. Thank you very much.